A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media. Now, I really enjoy finding new authors to kind of read and follow, especially if the authors are quite prolific, but for some reason or another, I have never actually heard of them. So I was really quite surprised when I read in an RPG kind of rules manual, that the game that I was reading about was based on somewhat the Dying Earth series of novels by Jack Vance. I've never heard of this author before, which really fucking shocked me. So I picked up the Tales of the Dying Earth by Jack Vance. This is his collection of his 4 Dying Earth novels, and decided to sit down and read the first one, which was simply called The Dying Earth. For those of you that don't know, Jack Vance was quite a prolific fantasy author. Sadly, he passed away. He wrote The Dying Earth in 1950, and you can really tell from reading the stories in this book how much of an impact Jack Vance's work had on modern fantasy authors today. For example, George R.R. Martin. How much of an impact it actually had on the creation of fantasy role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. Even his name, Vance, one of the Dungeons and Dragons villains and the main villain in season 4 of Stranger Things, I believe, Vecna, is an anagram of Vance. There are so many little things that jump out at you if you have ever played role-playing games, if you've ever read contemporary fantasy, pardon me, if you have ever just kind of enjoyed Dungeons and Dragons, things like that. So I'm just going to get right in it. I'm not going to go through each story in detail. I'm just going to tell you kind of the things that I liked. There wasn't anything I really disliked in The Dying Earth. I thought every character that they followed in the stories was really unique, even if you don't really agree with the morals of all of them. So, with that said, let's jump straight into the next segment of... So the first story in The Dying Earth centers on the character of Turjan of Mir. Now, I'm going to butcher names in this. I'm really sorry, but it's bound to happen. Now, Turjan wants to basically create life, and all of his experiments have so far turned up kind of flawed. So he finds a way to travel to a different dimension and meet with this great wizard called Pandalune or something like that. And he discovers that this being has created life in the form of this woman. However, the woman is flawed in as much as she sees things that are good as evil, she sees beauty as ugliness, and she just wants to destroy it. So Turjan gets help from this being and creates Tisane, who is the exact opposite of Tisane, who is the woman who hates everything. But she sees beauty and she sees loveliness and all this kind of thing. And so this story is really about like the creation of life, how like point of view kind of really matters here. And ultimately, Tisane meets her, I guess, sister. They kind of have a little bit of a back and forth, and then Turjan takes her back to the Dying Earth, which is basically the land or the planet where this series is set. And the sun is kind of slowly collapsing, and mankind doesn't have that much longer to live. It was a very good story. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a great introduction to the characters. of the Dying Earth. Now, the next story follows Maurizio the Magician. Again, I'm butchering these fucking names. Now, Maurizio the Magician has actually managed to capture Turjan, the character from the first story, and trap him in a maze because he wants to know Turjan's formula on kind of creating life, and Turjan isn't going to do that. But luckily, Turjan comes and saves the day, and they trap Maurizio in his own kind of maze, and then ride off happily into the sunset. It's pretty cool. You start to get an idea of where Dungeons & Dragons got the magic system, where when a wizard casts a spell, they forget that spell. That comes straight from the Dying Earth series. The next story, Turjan. Now remember the woman on the other plane that hated good things and only saw evil where there was good and wanted to destroy everything? She asks Padalune, can he send her to the Dying Earth because she hopes maybe she'll find her sister there and maybe she'll be able to see things that are ugly, that she sees as ugly, she'll be able to see as beautiful. Embellion is the name of the other plane of existence. So she goes there and she meets some ruffians, some people that are kind of not really good. She fights some monsters, but then she does meet Itar. Itar is a man who wears a mask because his face is hideous, and Itar tells her the story of what happened to him. He fell in love with this witch, and the witch basically used him. And ultimately, when he was trying to leave her because he realized how disgustingly evil she was, she consorted with demons and whatnot, she cast a spell and she swapped his face for the face of a demon. So now he wears like a demon's visage, and he's trying to get his face back. But so they basically, that's his kind of quest. Not revenge, but he just wants to look the way he did before. So Turjan decides to help him. They journey to this place where the witch and all these demons are having this kind of Sabbath celebration. And in the interim, he discovers that the demon that carries his face is actually dead. So there's no hope of him ever kind of getting his face back. He basically doesn't want to kill the witch, even though Turjan can't kind of understand why. And one thing leads to another, and the witch gets cursed, and Itar gets his face back, and Turjan realizes that she actually likes how his face looks, which shows that she has now changed, and she can see things for what they are. That was a really cool story. I really enjoyed it. I especially love the character of Itar. I thought he was really well written. Pardon me. And his backstory was really interesting. Okay, next up. Pardon me. Liane the Wayfarer. Liane the Wayfarer is a fucking jerk. He is a piece of shit through the whole story. He thinks he's God's gift to women. He's a great fighter, but he basically knows what he wants and he takes it. He discovers a ring in the forest that he can kind of step into and pull it over himself, and he's in another dimension. Portable hole, if anyone has ever played Dungeons and Dragons. And he decides that there is this new kind of witch or female wizard that has moved into this field, and he's going to go and introduce himself. He finds out she's gorgeous and he wants her, but she says, no, you have to do a favor for me first. He's like, fuck that. I don't do favors for people, they do favors for me. And she's like, no, you do me this, I'll be yours. all I want is this half of the tapestry. And she shows him this tapestry that's been torn in half. She tells him where it is. He's like, okay, I'll go get it. 3 days. Come back, you're mine. She's like, okay, cool. So he goes to this place where the tapestry is, the ruins of this ancient city. A lot of these stories are kind of set in ruins. I'm really glossing over a lot of the nuances here as well, so please forgive me. And basically, he goes and gets the tapestry. It is with this warlord called Chun the Unavoidable. And when he goes in there, he realizes how much of a threat Chun is. He grabs the tapestry, and then he fucks off and he goes to hide in his portable hole. But Chun can still get him there because he is Chun the Unavoidable. That's the whole point. You can't avoid him. We never find out what happens to Liane the Wayfarer. Hopefully he died because he's a fucking shit. But then Lith, who is the witch, gets the piece of the tapestry back. So that was a pretty good story. Ullandor is very interesting. It basically follows the nephew of this king, who the king wants him to travel to this faraway land because there are 2 tablets. Legend has it there are 2 tablets that, if put together, can kind of create great magic. And this king kind of, or prince I should say, kind of wants that magic for himself. So Ullandor sails across the land, comes to this kind of ruined place, and discovers that there is kind of a like this religious war happening. So many thousands of years in the past, there was this good king, and the king basically wanted the best for people, but the people split off into 2 factions. One faction worshipped an evil god, and one faction worshipped a good god, depending on whose point of view you are actually taking into account. So the king decided, enough is enough. Here are 2 tablets. You have 1 tablet, you have the other tablet. And when you are ready, bring the tablets together and you will get great power. Ultimately, the king dies. Thousands of years go by. So when Ullandor goes to this city, he discovers that there are grey cloaks and green cloaks. Green cloaks can't see the grey cloaks, apparently. Grey cloaks can't see the green cloaks, apparently. He's wearing a red cloak, so they assume that he is a raider. He gets taken in by some green cloaks, who kind of tell him what's going on. Then he meets this girl who is a grey cloak, and she kind of protects him and brings him food, and he ultimately says, listen, we need to get these tablets. She says, look, 1 tablet's in this temple, 1 tablet's in this temple, it's impossible. But there are fucking flying machines here. So they decide to kind of work out how the flying machines work. They do. There's some fighting here and there with some monsters and shit. It's pretty cool. And they fly in and they grab the tablet from one temple, and they grab the tablet from the other temple, and then they fly to where the tablets kind of say to go, this giant tower in the middle of the city. And when they get to the top of the tower, there's just a giant fucking brain. And you find out that the king from thousands of years ago is kind of this brain in a jar now. And he realizes when they wake him up that the people have just been fucking around for 1,000 years. And he's like, you know, fuck this, everyone's dying. So ultimately, Ullandor stabs the big brain with his magic sword. The brain goes fucking crazy, starts killing everyone. He and the girl jump in their flying car and they fuck off out of there. I thought the flying car stuff was going to be stupid, or the airplane stuff was going to be stupid. Really cool. Adds a little bit of a sci-fi twist to the Dying Earth stuff. Thoroughly enjoyed it. A really good story. Okay, next up, we have Guyal of Saphir. Now, Guyal is a really great character. He was born with something wrong with him, so he is infinitely curious. All he does is ask question after question after question. Ultimately, his father gets fucking sick of this and says, listen, go to the curator up north, the Museum of Man. He has all the knowledge. I'll help you on your way. I'll give you an egg that will protect you when you sleep. It's like a giant tent. A dagger that glows in the dark, and my blessing. If you are ever on a trail, you can never be hurt. If you stay on the trail, you can never be hurt. So he heads off north. Ultimately comes to this kind of ruins where it seems like this man is perpetually playing a flute for this young woman, and she's trying to get him to Guyal to take up the flute. For some reason, the old man wants him to take it up. It was a very strange thing, very creepy. I didn't know exactly where it was quite going. Ultimately, he gets to his destination. He sees a ghost, and then some villagers come, and he tells the villagers of the ghost, and they're like, fuck, if you've seen a ghost, that means it's time for us to do the offering. They trick him into breaking the law. He goes to jail, and his sentence is he's not allowed to break the law again. He has to pick he has to pick the most beautiful girl out of all the girls in the village, and then they'll tell him his third one later. So he goes and he looks at all the girls, and all the girls have done everything they can to make themselves look ugly. They do not want to be picked for whatever it is that he has to do. He picks one. Turns out it's the daughter of the man who tricked him. The guy's like, fine, you're going to take her to the Museum of Man. You're going with her, and you're not coming back. This is it. And the daughter's all fucking upset, but whatever. So they head off. He talks with this girl. She's scared, but very sweet. Ultimately, they end up kind of falling for each other on the journey. They get to the Museum of Man, where they see a ghost in the doorway. When they open the door, the ghost beckons them inside, but they're like, no fucking way. Guyal draws his dagger, and the ghost kind of dissipates. They go into the museum, where they find all of these magnificent treasures and everything like that. The city that the museum is on is now a fucking ruin because it's been thousands of years. But there's all of this really great stuff in this museum, art and sculptures and diagrams and all of this kind of stuff. They meet the curator of the museum. He's gone crazy. He does not believe that the city above has been destroyed, but he does tell Guyal that there is a device that he will sit in, like he will sit Guyal in and put it over his head, and it will open up his mind to all of the truths. Guyal tricks the curator into sitting in it. Now, before all this is going on, I've skipped a step here. There's like a giant demon called Blickdak who is kind of coming out of the wall, and they're trying to fight him off. That's where the curator kind of meets them for the first time. And it turns out he's been holding this demon at bay, trying to stop the demon from breaching into our world. This reminded me a lot of the later Raymond E. Feist novels, the later Raymond E. Feist novels, where Pug and his son have to travel to the lower dimensions from Midkemia. It just kind of reminded me of that. So you can see again, it's clear that Raymond E. Feist has read some Jack Vance. So they trick the curator into sitting in this machine. They turn it on, and he is no longer mad. He gets kind of his mind back. And he understands what he has to do, but he realizes that he's dying. They fight Blickdak, get him back into the demon dimension, and then he passes curatorship of the Museum of Man on to Guyal and the woman who are kind of now in love. Fucking awesome story. Really, really loved the characters. Love the description of everything. Even the demon name is just so reminiscent of early Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, and then... Hold on, what's the last story? Let me just find it. No, that's still... Oh, that was the last story. I'm sorry. I thought there was one more. No. So that is all of the stories in The Dying Earth, the first book in the Tales of the Dying Earth series by Jack Vance. If you love fantasy, if you love contemporary fantasy authors, if you love Dungeons and Dragons, I cannot recommend this book enough. Written in the 1950s, holds up today. Great stories, great characterization. There are 3 more books to go. I've heard some mixed reviews on a couple of them, but I am looking forward to diving into them and kind of really seeing how they turn out. Now, I know I glossed over a lot here. Like the language is very nuanced. I think Jack Vance is a fantastic writer, so much so that I actually went and purchased a science fiction series that he wrote because like I did with Paul Anderson, I want to see how his fantasy novels kind of hold up to his sci-fi novels. Really looking forward to exploring those as well. So, with that said, we're going to leave it here. Like, subscribe, leave a message, stay safe, but most importantly, read a fucking book, people. See you in the next one.